Now, as the cutbacks across Ireland continue to shock us, a percentage of people will now face paying full amounts for their medication if the pharmacies decide to withdraw their services from the state drug schemes.
Here to discuss what effects this will have on all of us is Tom Murray, a pharmacist from Donegal, asthma sufferer Geraldine Clark, and chief pharmacist for the HSE, Kate Mulvenna. Good morning to you one and all. Yeah. Geraldine, I'm going to come to you first because you're going to be directly affected by this, like many, many, many thousands of other people who won't be able to get their medication, might have to travel many miles and might have to pay an awful lot more for it. So how is it going to affect you as you understand it?
Well, I won't be able to afford my medication because some of my inhalers are very expensive, as are most asthmatics if they're on certain medication, a combination of medications. And asthma is totally preventative, so these are preventative medicines. And if I can't afford my inhalers, it means I'll present more often at an A&E, which will put more pressure on hospitals.
What would the full whack cost you, Geraldine, a month?
I'd say over €200, if not more, for my medications.
And what are you going to do, Geraldine? Because asthma is your asthma very severe?
It is, but it's controlled. It's managed, controlled. Yeah.
So what happens if the pollen levels go up?
I just don't breathe. If I haven't got the inhalers, if I haven't got my medication on a daily basis, I just don't breathe. I basically, if I don't make it to a hospital, I die. So that's what's going to happen. If people don't get their medication, a totally preventative illness, people are going to die because 2 to 3 people die every week in Ireland from an asthma attack.
So do you feel that the HSE is putting your life at risk?
I feel, yes, I do. And while the pharmacists, the HSE and the Minister for Health are playing with numbers and figures, we are the numbers and figures. We are the people out there, ordinary, everyday people who are under pressure as it is from the cutbacks and the extra financial pressure. A lot of people will not be able to afford it. So the rate will go up from 2 to 3 people to a lot more.
OK, let's bring Tom Murray in. Tom, the bottom line here is that everybody, and particularly the state agencies using public monies, have got to cut costs.
Absolutely.
And what you're saying they're doing is that you're cutting your margins, therefore jeopardising your businesses and risking mass unemployment across the sector. Now, they're saying that your margins on these prescriptions are about 17–18%. They want to cut them to 10%. Given the volume of business that's involved in the medical card scheme, you would have thought a 10% margin would be more than enough to cover your costs.
Mark, I've looked at this from my own business, from my own 2 shops in Donegal. I'm aware of lots of the contractors who've done that. There's nobody that's not aware of the financial crisis the country's in, and there's nobody that doesn't want to play their part in that. We, in the IPU and in the pharmacists, have made submissions to the Minister and to the HSE in how to make savings. We agreed that we could make savings of €85 million. We also agreed to take the same 8% cut that all other health professionals were taking. The Minister decided that she didn't want to talk to us about that, and she brought in a legislation where she gives a 34% cut. It's not about cutting our margins, it's cutting our ability to provide service. When I look at my business, the cuts that have been imposed on me will prevent me from providing service to patients like Geraldine, patients that I care about and patients that I don't want to be withdrawn from service from. This is not where I want to be. I want to be back home, operating my pharmacy, providing service to my patients. I just know that from the financial implications of these cuts, I can't do it, and that worries me. And for that reason, I'd better withdraw from the service and try and get the Minister to talk to me.
But in the meantime, we've got patients and people like Geraldine who need your help, and you are, in effect, withdrawing it. I understand why you're explaining you are, but your primary concern is for the people who come into your chemist looking for medication to prevent them losing their lives at times.
My primary concern is always for the patient as a professional pharmacist. That's what pharmacists do. I'm not withdrawing my care from the patient. I will be there to offer all the advice I can to the patient, all the help I can to the patient. The HSE has drawn up a contingency plan where they have told me they will be able to provide the care to my patients. In my own performance in Donegal, I think that won't work. I think it's a fig leaf cover, and I don't think it'll provide the care to the patients.
Are they asking you, in effect, to subsidise the dispensing of these medicines?
We have always, in my opinion, subsidised the state. The GMS fees that we do. The GMS is underfunded, and not part of what we do to subsidise that comes from the markup we get from 1/4 of medicines. We only get a markup from 1/4 of the medicines. So it's a bit of an untrue picture to say that margins are high across all medicines. They're quite clearly not. We get a markup on 1/4. In fact, in Donegal, I get a markup on 1/5. For every 5 prescriptions I dispense, 4 of them are without markup. So that markup does subsidise the 4. What I would like to see is that the state schemes are properly funded and balanced, that we can continue to provide service in a professional manner. And I would like to grow the service and offer more professional services to both the patients and to the state, which would reduce costs going forward and would improve the care of the patients.
Tom, if you took these cuts, are you saying that you would have to close your doors, you wouldn't be able to continue business?
I'm saying if I took the cuts that have been imposed by the Minister at the minute, I would be out of business within a very short period of time.
Kate, the HSE quite regularly gets a kicking in the media, but you seem to be in a rock between the rock and the hard place where this is concerned, because this is an edict handed down by the Department of Health and the Minister, which the HSE now has to implement. Would I be right in thinking, and I don't know whether you can say this publicly or not, would I be right in thinking that you have some sympathy with the pharmacists?
What I think is important to understand is this is part of an ongoing programme to reduce the price of medicines to the taxpayer. There has been a government decision, and the HSE's role in that is implementing the decision. Well, first of all, I'd like to talk to patients like Geraldine who are worried about where they're going to go for their medicines. It's important to understand that a lot of contractors have not withdrawn their services, and that towards the end of this week we will be publishing those pharmacists who will still be available to provide services.
Okay, there's about 1,600 in the scheme, and there's 800 have officially said to you that they're withdrawing from their contract.
1,800 were written to by the HSE asking them to reconsider their decision. We asked them to understand the consequences of their decision, and we asked them to identify to us, if they chose to continue on with that decision, those patients who needed extra support.
Effectively, half of all the pharmacists in the scheme have withdrawn from the contract.
Effectively, what has happened is that 800 pharmacists have chosen to withdraw from the schemes, have chosen to terminate their contract under the new arrangements. But I'd like to make an important point, if I could, in terms of what Tom was saying, in terms of the actual remuneration that pharmacists receive. He's right that there is only 1 in 4, but 3 in 4, 75% of prescription items are under the GMS. The average cost of a GMS item is €18. Under the old arrangements, the average dispensing fee was €3.60. That is a margin of 20%. Under the new regime that the Minister has brought in, that will go up to €4. So that is going up to 25%. And on the 15 million, there's 55 million in the GMS, 15 million in the DPS. Those at the moment attract an extra cost to the state of 75%, and that will be reduced to 45% under the new arrangement. So it's important to understand that aspect as well. But for the HSE, the key thing is to reassure patients we are absolutely committed that they will continue to get their medicines, and we're asking them to plan ahead and cooperate with us in our efforts to ensure that they continue to have access to the medicines they need.
Okay, well, let's take Donegal as an example there. If you're living in the back end of Donegal and your local pharmacy is in the scheme, but it now decides to withdraw, then you as a patient could conceivably have to drive anything from 50, 60 to 100 kilometres to find another one. So what happens if you don't have transport? Public transport in those areas aren't good.
If I can address Donegal, because quite simply, Donegal is one of the areas that we are more challenged. We have more pharmacists who have chosen to avail of their right to terminate their contract. So therefore, in Donegal, we have some pharmacies that will still continue to provide services up to 20%. We have those alternative sites which we are operating ourselves in an effort. We recognise that will not be as convenient and as accessible, but we are making sure that people will have access to their medicines. We're asking them to plan ahead, to go to those areas where they have their weekly shopping, to those pharmacies that are there.
Can I just bring Tom in, because he's been shaking his head violently throughout a lot of what you've been saying. Very quickly, Tom.
Just shaking my head on 2 reasons. Number one, from the IPU's perspective, we are aware of 1,150 contractors who will be terminating service. It's 1,150, not 800.
Well, there's a big meeting today, and more will declare their hand.
They absolutely could. Today is an information meeting for the IPU. I'll be at that meeting, but to this point in time, there's 1,150. In Donegal, 48 out of 52 contracts have said they can't continue with the costs. The HSE have put in place 4 dispensaries. 4. For Donegal alone. We dispense 4,000 prescription items a day in Donegal, and they expect us from 4 remote sites which patients can't get access to. One of those in Inishowen. There's one dispensing site for the whole of Inishowen, which is a geographical area the same size as the whole of County Leitrim. And I would question the safety of asking any patient to travel those distances.
To finish, do you have faith in what Kate says at the HS? You don't?
No, because what they're doing is they're playing with numbers, they're playing with money, they're playing with figures. What they're not doing is looking at what people really want, really need, and we're a faceless minority. And people are going to die because people are not going to travel. If you can't breathe, you can't travel.
The HSE is absolutely committed to ensuring that people have access to their medicines. We are working extremely hard to ensure that...
Guys, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm very sorry.
We didn't start the problem. We won't be found wanting in finding a solution to the problem. We've asked the Minister for a meeting 3 weeks ago and she's refused to. If the Minister for Health will meet with us, we will not be found wanting in solving this problem. I have to say that from the
Thanks very much, one and all.
With both sides talking, coming to an agreement. The sooner you do it, the sooner you get an answer.
Thank you very much.
So get on with it, I think, is the basically the message
if you're
from
at
us.
home and you're concerned about getting your medication like Geraldine did, do text in and do let us know, and we'd love to get your feedback.
Right, coming up, we're finding out how scientific research here in Ireland is trying to help asthma sufferers.